Welcome, Mage. I'm Rhino. Today we are going over the Magic the Gathering keyword ability, Landfall. In just a bit, I'll tell you a story of how I recently won a game of Commander with a big Landfall trigger. But first, here's the basics. Landfall is pretty simple, but there are a few things people get wrong. It seems pretty simple. Landfall cards start out with whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, then it tells you what it does. Let's use Jotty Offshoot as an example. It says, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. That's pretty simple. And it makes a lot of sense. If we have Jotty Offshoot on the battlefield and we put Evolving Wilds, we gain a life. If we sacrifice that Evolving Wilds to get a forest and put it on the battlefield, we gain another life. Landfall doesn't care what type of land, as long as it's a land. You don't get anything extra for guild gates, and you don't get any less for a basic land. A land is a land. If it's so simple, what do people get wrong? For the most part, you can't stop Landfall. Putting a land on the battlefield isn't casting a spell. You can't counter land. You can counter a spell that puts extra land on the battlefield. You can also counter an ability with a card like Disallow, but that will only counter the ability of a single permanent. If your opponent is playing a deck with Landfall, you need to counter the spell before they are on the battlefield. How do people get it wrong? There are 2 things people get wrong. 1, Landfall only triggers when a land enters the battlefield. For this example, we are using Mirage Mirror. It's already on the battlefield, and we need to use its ability to copy a land our opponent has. We need that extra color of mana. Mirage Mirror becomes an opulent palace. Does Landfall trigger? No, it doesn't. The Mirage Mirror was already on the battlefield, so there was no entering the battlefield trigger, and no Landfall. The second thing people get wrong is trying to go back and count Landfall. Let's say we just put out a forest. Then we use that forest to cast a Jotty Offshoot. We don't gain a life for the forest entering the battlefield on our turn. I know it seems silly to say this, but Landfall only triggers on permanents on the battlefield. They are on the battlefield when the land comes in. You can't go back and count lands before. There are cards like Mysteries of the Deep that count if a land enters the battlefield during the turn, but it only does that because it's an instant. So now for my Landfall story. I was in a pod of 4 players. I had just started playing the Land Wrath Commander deck. The only thing I had done to the deck was replace 3 land cards, but everything else was the same. And in this pod, I was playing against a deck that cheated out Angels and Demons, 1 super vampire deck, making lots of vampires, and the final opponent was playing a mill deck. These were 3-tune decks. I didn't have a chance with a barely upgraded precon. As the game progressed, I was behind constantly. I was hit from all sides. Angels and demons and vampires kept hitting me, but that wasn't the worst of it. The mill player kept hitting me for a few cards, and then he milled half my library. The damage was coming everywhere, and the threat of having no library was very real. I had a few creatures on the battlefield, including Embodiment of Insight and Rampaging Baloths, but they weren't doing that good since I didn't have land in my hand. Then I got the Mending of Dominaria on the field. They didn't notice what it would do. I just had to hold out for a couple of turns. The angels and demons and vampires were getting close to overwhelm, and then the mending fired. I had 18 lands in my graveyard, then all entered the battlefield, and 18 4/4 beasts exploded on the field. On top of that, all those lands became 3/3 elementals with vigilance and haste. And there was no way my opponent could recover. Elementals hit the vampire player and took him out. The mill player conceded immediately, and the next turn, angels and demons couldn't help but be overwhelmed by the sheer number of creatures attacking. That was a surprise ending. It also shows that the pre-constructed decks can be pretty good. I really like that little Landfall deck. I hope that this video has helped you understand Landfall. I have many more of these videos coming out, so make sure you subscribe. If you have any specific questions about Magic Gathering, put them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them all. I have more videos coming out soon, so until then, riding well.